Good morning, dear students of class 12. Welcome to the English online learning class. Today we are going to take up second chapter from your main reader Flamingo, Lost Spring Stories of Stolen Childhood. And this lesson we are going to take up the text part of the lesson. We have already taken up overview of this lesson, part 1 and part 2. We'll take up the text explanation of this lesson. So first, let us have a brief background about the author, Anis Jung. 1964, was born in Rourkela and spent her childhood and adolescence in Hyderabad. She received her education in Hyderabad and in the United States of America. Her parents were both writers. She began her career as a writer in India. She had been an editor and columnist for major newspapers in India and abroad, and has authored several books. This lesson, Lost Spring Stories of Stolen Childhood, which you are going to read, it is an excerpt. It's a portion from her book, which is titled as Lost Spring Stories of Stolen Childhood. The lesson is in two parts. Here, she analyzes the grinding poverty and traditions which condemned these children to a life of exploitation. So, she's talking about the children who work as child laborers. And she, in the lesson, throws light on the poverty and traditions which is condemning these children to lead a life full of exploitation. And these children are devoid of the normal childhood, the happiness, the rights of normal children. Now, the first part of this lesson we are going to take up today. Sometimes I find a rupee in the garbage. This portion, the first unit, is titled as Sometimes I Find a Rupee in the Garbage. Why do you do this? I asked Sahib. Narrator is questioning a child who is a rag picker, and his name is Sahib, whom I encounter every morning scrounging for gold in the garbage dumps of my neighborhood. So this child, Sahib, the writer meets every morning without fail. And what is the child doing? He is searching for gold in the garbage dumps of her neighborhood. Now, scrounging, searching for gold. Gold is here stands for something which is valuable in the sense that it can be sold and it is a source of livelihood. So through this, in this garbage dump, this child is finding out something which is valuable and which can be sold and which can earn these children livelihood, their daily bread, and they can support their family. Sahib left his home long ago. So she comes to know through this conversation with the child that he has left his home long ago, his native land, set amidst the green fields of Dhaka. So originally belonged to Dhaka. And he had left his native land and settled here in search of a living, his family. His home is not even a distant memory. He doesn't remember his own now anymore, his native place anymore. There were many storms that swept away their fields and home, his mother tells him. Probably this he has heard from his mother, what made them leave their native land because of storms which damaged their fields and home. So out of compulsion, they were forced to leave their native land and come and settle in this place for earning a livelihood. That's why they left looking for gold in the big city where he now lives. Big city refers to Delhi. He has now settled, the family has now settled in Delhi in search of livelihood, in search of survival. I have nothing else to do. Now, this is the reply that this Sahib gives to the writer. I have nothing else to do, and that is why I do this. He mutters, looking away. Go to school, I say glibly, realizing immediately how hollow the advice might sound. So, the narrator has a suggestion for the writer, for this child. Why doesn't he go to school? But then, after giving the suggestion, the narrator realizes her mistake, and her advice sounds very hollow to her. There is no school in my neighborhood. When they build one, I will go. So the child replies very smartly, there is no school in my neighborhood. And when it is built, I am going to go. Probably this is not the real reason. The real reason is the child is hiding. He has too much of self-respect to say that his parents cannot afford to send him to school. Now the writer has a suggestion for him. If I start a school, will you come? I ask half joking. So the writer is not serious. But then she says, without understanding or without realizing the impact of her sentence, if I start a school, will you join? Yes, he says, smiling proudly. The child replies in positive. Yes, I will join your school. A few days later, I see him running up to me. Is your school ready? So now Sahib has posed a question to the writer, asking her if her school was ready. It takes longer to build a school. So, to escape from embarrassment, the writer replies that it is not so easy to build a school. It takes time. I say embarrassed at having made a promise that was not meant. The writer realizes the mistake she had of her words. She had promised the child that she would make a school where the child would get a chance to study. But now she realized that her promise was hollow. But promises like mine abound in every corner of his bleak world. But such promises are all around. There are plenty in every corner of his world which has no hope. After months of knowing him, I ask him his name. So the writer has seen him months together, and whenever she gets time, she talks to him, and she has started knowing him. So now she wants to know his name. Sahib-e-Alam, he announces. So very proudly he tells his name, Sahib-e-Alam. He does not know what it means. Probably he does not know the meaning of his name himself. If he knew its meaning, Lord of the universe, the name means Lord of the universe, he would have a hard time believing it. He would himself not believe it, because his name means he is Lord of the universe. But he is a rag picker who is struggling very hard to make a living for himself as well as his family. Life is not easy for him. He has to struggle very hard. Unaware of what his name represents, he roams the streets with his friends, an army of barefoot boys. Now, these children he is not alone. He has a group of boys who are rag pickers, and they are barefoot. They are wearing without slippers. Uh, they are not wearing slippers. They are without slippers. They are barefoot. who appear like morning birds. They come like morning birds. Early in the morning, they come like birds and they start their work and then disappear at noon. At noon time, they are not to be seen. Their work of um, looking for things which can be sold in the from the garbage is over. They have completed their day's work. Over the months, I have come to recognize each of them. So, because the writer is observing these children for months together, she has started recognizing each of them. Why aren't you wearing chappals? I ask one. So she poses another question to a child and wants to know why is he not wearing chappals. What is the reply the child gives? My mother did not bring them down from the shelf, he answers simply. But that is not the actual reason. Again, the boy is hiding his poverty. Even if she did, he will throw them off, adds another, who is wearing shoes that do not match. The other child, who is lucky because he has got a pair of discarded shoes which are not matching, he immediately replies that even if his mother gives him, she takes him out from the shelf, he is not going to wear it. When I comment on it, he scuffles his feet and says nothing. I want shoes, says a third boy. The third boy makes his demand clear and says that he wants shoes, who has never owned a pair all his life. Traveling across the country, I have seen children walking barefoot in cities on village roads. It is not lack of money, but a tradition to stay barefoot is one explanation. So different explanations people give for not wearing chappals or slippers. It is not lack of money, they say, but some say it is a tradition to stay barefoot. I wonder if this is only an excuse to explain away a perpetual state of poverty. Probably the writer feels that this is an excuse to hide the real reason, which is perpetual, a continual state of poverty, which they do not accept. And they hide it by saying it's a tradition or they do not like wearing slippers. They give different reasons. I remember a story from Udupi once told. A man from Udupi once told me, as a young boy, he would go to school past an old temple where his father was a priest. He would stop briefly at the temple and pray for a pair of shoes. So this man would offer his prayers, asking God to give him a blessing of a pair of shoes. But 30 years later, I visited his town and the temple, which was now drowned in an air of desolation. In the backyard where lived the new priest, there were red and white plastic chairs. So, over the years, the place had got a change. She could see red and white plastic chairs, and a young boy dressed in grey uniform, wearing socks and shoes, arrived panting. Panting means he was almost out of breath. He was wearing uniform, he was wearing socks and shoes, and threw his bag on a folding bed. Looking at the boy, I remembered the prayer another boy had made to the goddess when he had finally got a pair of shoes. Let me never lose them. So once when the boy had got earlier a pair of shoes, he made another prayer to God saying that bless him so that he never loses his pair of shoes. Probably now the narrator feels the goddess had granted his prayers because all the children in this village now they were blessed with shoes, school uniform, and the place had seen lot of development. Young boys like the son of the priest now wore shoes. but many others, like the rag pickers in my neighborhood,